All right. Well, good afternoon. Judge Lung is our guest today. Thank you so much for joining us. I am just so excited that you were willing to talk with us today because as I'm just getting this podcast going, I know you have a lot of heart and passion for families, and you're not currently on the bench in domestic relations, but were for many, many years in Douglas County, Colorado. So welcome. And maybe you could just tell us a little bit about your path toward, the kind of work you did as an attorney and sort of how long are you on the domestic bench, what you're doing now, and we'll go from there.
Sure. So I did my undergraduate here in Colorado at Regis University and fell in love with Colorado and kind of
Right.
promised myself that however I could find a way to back to Colorado, I would make it. And I did law school in Ohio. And the woman I was dating at the time, I had a job waiting for me in California. I had a six-figure job at corporate headquarters of a very large title insurance company. That said, "Hey, come to California. We got a great salary and a great start for you." And the woman I was dating said, "I'll move to Colorado with you if you want, but I think it'll be very difficult on our relationship." And I was like, "Oh, so there was one path that said, yeah, this way for a career, and one path that said this way for family." And so I moved to Colorado with no job prospect, no family in the state, no connections, no nothing. And but I, married her, and we were happily married for 19 years. So, and two sons to show for. So I have no regrets on passing the California lifestyle
Yeah.
for a family. That was a good choice. I moved out here, passed the bar, and um, the only connection I had was one of my professors when I was at Regis became the president of the university, and I reached out to Father Sheeran at the time and said, "Father, I need a job. Can you help me?"
Yeah.
And he got me a job for a law firm in Aurora, just to be their intern. And so I worked there for a year, but they didn't have any positions. And then I did temp work, and then I got my first real job, which was in the family support division under Jip Peters.
Parents get frustrated in the domestic side that the resources are so different. And obviously it's because it's the state versus the parent and it's much heavier liberty interest basically. And so there's a lot of issues in this, but talk about just the importance of like maybe child advocacy in these cases and the difference between DNN and kind of, to me, they're both really important. Seems to me that our laws are kind of trending toward getting more voices of kids, even in the domestic cases.
Yeah, I would certainly agree that domestic is just as important as juvenile. And I think that while you're saying, well, draw the distinctions, I would draw the what's common.
Yeah.
And it's that what's critical for judicial officers, what's critical for attorneys, whether the domestic attorneys or juvenile attorneys, what's critical for the parents or the foster parents or everybody involved in both case types is the knowledge of what trauma, does. What's the sort of what I always referred to in prior presentations was the multifaceted impact of trauma because it impacts a child, a youth, physically, neurologically, psychologically, emotionally, and that we have to be really cognizant of that impact. And so I think that's what's the thing that needs to be in common with both of those case types is having a much deeper understanding of trauma and its impact on children and how to guard against it or how to recover from it or to manage it and keeping the goal being trying to maintain the safest, healthiest, happiest childhood for the kids.
I think it's super interesting that all the new research on attachment with children let me back up. All the so much research right now is about how what determines how your children do in divorce is your co-parenting. That we have and even in a sobriety case, we actually had a Family Law Institute um presentation with this expert who is a lawyer and a psychologist who does a ton of work with sobriety problems and talking about the attachment needs and how you've got to weigh those better than just, okay, no, there's some degree of, there might be some expected minor relapse. That doesn't mean, for example, that you lose your children for 6 months, because that would be bad for the children. And so, how do we balance all of that, even when we have some slippage that goes backwards a little bit?
Right.
So I think that's really interesting, and how have you found yourself trying to, like, maybe in a really highly litigious case, what have you seen work? I don't know if there's anything you've seen work or that you've told parents about in terms of trying to get them to focus on this need to co-parent, even with this brokenness, right? That's what your kids need more than anything else in terms of what determines their outcomes.
Yeah, I think that is kind of my advantage is I've been on the bench a long time and I have a lot of experiences in a lot of different fields. And one of the things that I think about when I'm trying to help parents understand, like if there's something that's highly litigious or if there's a circumstance of, drugs, alcohol abuse, mental health, is helping them understand that, for instance, for the protective parent, where they're like, well, I'm never going to let this person see the children ever again because, I can't trust them and they're not protective and they're not safe, is helping them understand that even their efforts to protect the child could in fact be harming the child. Because if you know anything about the Adverse Childhood Experience Survey, the total absence of a parent, even if the parent, can only have supervised or has to have gradual, the total absence of a parent is an adverse childhood experience. So even your effort to protect the child might be harming the child in some way. And so you have to leave that bit of hope or that a bit of involvement, so that there can be that rebuilding of that relationship, rebuilding of the child trusting the parent, of the co-parent trusting the co-parent. It takes a long time, but understanding that you could be having a lifelong impact on your children as they grow up if you're disparaging or berating the other parent, if you are completely trying to remove that other parent from the child's life. I often will tell the folks that I'm training is that, we're not here to, in the case of domestic relations, there's no terminating of parental rights.
Colorado is really a leader in that. I mean, the national dialogue, there's a lot of focus on Colorado in terms of how we handle children's voices and domestic violence concerns and child abuse and child sexual abuse. And I think we can expect more of that. I mean, we've had a couple legislative sessions that have really changed the way our child investigators and, the training for them and
Right.
our psychological evaluators I think more training is always good. People grumble about it, but more training is better than no training. The funding for it or lack of it is a problem, but the fact that it's required, I think, is super important. So, well, I don't want to keep you too long, but any kind of parting other thoughts? I mean, any encouragement? We've covered a lot of heavy stuff. Is there any other things that you would say, maybe to the bench, or to the bar, or to parents as a way of admonition or encouragement, or both?
I turn back to the work I've done in human trafficking. That when I realized many many years ago how progressive the federal government was combating human trafficking, I had such a great sense of hope that oh wow, I mean, the feds have been doing this anti-trafficking work for over 20 years, and so it was very encouraging and empowering to me to know that our own federal government was committed to making a better future for victims of human trafficking. Well, it's that exact same thing to me in the field and practice of domestic relations, is that we are actively engaged in trying to improve the laws and in trying to improve the application of it. There are right now. I'm turning to my computer because I can't keep all the names of them straight. But there is the Colorado Domestic Relations Problem Solving Court. There's a group of judges and members of the um, bar that are trying to figure out if treating domestic relations as the same as a problem solving court is a good method. There is the standing committee on family issues. There is the bench bar committee that was convened under Chief Justice Boatwright. There's the constant commitment by the Colorado judicial branch to improve the education of judicial officers. I'm teaching at a judicial conference in September, and I'm blessed with the opportunity to teach about docket management and tell them about initial status conferences and empowering the parties.